Greetings, loved ones, and welcome back to Loving Montessori, where we use principles of the Montessori method to guide us through living, learning, and loving just a little bit better every day. My name is Mariah, and as a former English teacher and bit of a book collector, I knew in creating this channel that I would certainly end up talking about books. So that being said, my very first book talk for this channel, I'll be discussing The Montessori Baby, and this book was co-written by Simone Davies and Juunifa Uzodike. You may have heard of Simone Davies as the author of The Montessori Toddler. In The Montessori Baby, she has the help of another Montessori mom. I have a lot to say about this book. I really enjoyed the read overall, so let's get into it. Just a quick synopsis if you are unfamiliar with the title. This is taken from the back cover. Drawing on principles developed by the educator Dr. Maria Montessori, The Montessori Baby shows how to raise your baby from birth to age 1 with love, respect, insight, and a surprising sense of calm. It's a book filled with hundreds of practical ideas for understanding what is actually happening with your baby and how you can mindfully assist in their learning and development. After reading this book, I can 100% confirm that the authors deliver on these claims and then some. The work is quite comprehensive in scope, and while the authors claim to support parents from birth to age 1, there are considerations for during a pregnancy or for otherwise expecting parents included as well. Topics that are covered range from a basic introduction of Montessori and its principles to a detailed guide to your baby's growth and development, to steps for preparing yourself, your environment, and your community for the arrival of your little one. Also included is a wide range of, I guess what I'll refer to as bonus materials or additional resources in the form of appendices, illustrated guides, charts, tables, graphs, even testimonials from real Montessori families, all of which I'll get into a little bit later. I know that for me, when I'm considering whether or not to spend my time, energy, financial resources on any given book, especially if it's a nonfiction or resource-oriented book, one of my first questions is, am I going to learn anything from this? So that in mind, I wanted to share what you can expect to learn from this book. As I've already mentioned, The Montessori Baby is a comprehensive resource and field guide for parents of newborns who wish to implement the Montessori method with their baby. After a quick intro on the Montessori philosophy, chapters guide readers through their baby's development from conception to birth. They provide guidance on setting up the home and parenting effectively, offering a variety of activities that optimize the child's stages of growth and development, and include practical advice for implementing these methods with specific consideration given to the diverse range of families and circumstances that factor into your home and how your family functions. I consider myself to be relatively well versed in Montessori, and I still learned so much from Davies and Uzodike's expertise. If you are newer to the content, rest assured that the information is well organized and easily digestible, which brings me to my next topic. Another consideration that I always keep in mind for the books that I read is the accessibility, or in other words, how easily can I digest and integrate this content? And to be honest, the book was a bit daunting. It's not a slim book. The table of contents takes up about 4 pages, and there's about 250 pages total in the book, and so at first I did feel a bit intimidated by the sheer weight of the book. However, those initial concerns turned out to be completely irrelevant. The book is written in a very conversational tone and follows a very simple, logical, organizational structure, so it was a delightful, easy read. My husband and I actually read mostly out loud together. On his days off of work, we would read a few pages over morning coffee, maybe read a few more during our evening downtime, and even with the relative sporadic nature of how often we were reading, and with pauses after paragraphs or pages to kind of debrief and joke or talk about what we had just read, we read the book in about a month, maybe about 5 weeks. So very digestible, very easy to get through, both for me, who is more familiar with Montessori, and for my husband, who is not so much. You can choose to read cover to cover for kind of that more comprehensive feel, or you can use it as a reference manual or field guide, an encyclopedia of sorts. We had kind of a combination. We mostly read cover to cover, especially as it applied to the theoretical content. However, we did skip a couple of the more practical chapters until we have a child or are closer to having a child, for which we can implement those practical life activities and practical considerations for preparing our environment. We did kind of briefly overview those sections, but in general, we'll look a bit more closely at those chapters when it's a bit more relevant to us. I should also mention that we stop a lot whenever we read anything, and this book included. We will discuss some things that we might have questions about, or maybe make a joke, or otherwise kind of just take note of the things that we find interesting and how we want to implement what we're reading into our own lives. So we didn't rush, we took our time, and still very quick and easy to get through. The chapters are organized in a very logical manner. One thing I particularly appreciated was the breakdown, especially in topics centered on the development of the child. You could always expect to see the age broken down into 3-month periods, and even shorter periods of time depending on the content. And so that makes it such a good field guide for just opening up to a page. I currently have a 6-month-old. This is the gross motor development that we should be kind of keeping an eye out for. This is the psychomotor or social development that might apply to the child at this time, or whatever it happens to be that you're looking for. Very simple, very easy to find, and well organized. Whether you are familiar with Montessori or a bit newer, I really would say that the book is accessible and digestible. Myself being a bit more informed, my husband having a bit less prior knowledge, we both really felt it was easy to understand and figure out how we can start to integrate into our own lives. After I decide what I think I'll learn and if I'm able to digest the content, another consideration or question that I ask myself is this book for me? And what I mean by that is the book inclusive? Unfortunately, one harsh reality that I've come to accept as a former English teacher and avid reader is that much of what has been published until relatively recently has centered on traditional values, which oftentimes is really just coded language for predominantly white, heteronormative, Christian, cisgendered principles. And there's certainly nothing wrong with white, heteronormative Christian perspectives, but they don't apply to a lot of people who I know. They don't apply to a lot of people who live in this country, and they don't apply to a lot of parents. In recent years, we certainly have seen an increase in representation of diverse groups and perspectives, not just in publishing, but across all media platforms. As someone who believes that content created for public consumption should accurately represent the people who make up the public, I am definitely a proponent of this shift towards visibility and representation for historically misrepresented and underrepresented groups. That being said, I appreciated Davies and Uzodike's frequent inclusion of diverse families. Specific considerations were given to adoptive parents, same-gender parents, co-parents, and more. Additionally, the authors included guidance and recommendations for families with fewer resources, whether that be in regards to time, money, or community support. Families with multiples, families with members with disabilities or neurodiversities, and families who rely on childcare were all included within these pages. For those reasons, I do feel that it's safe to say that this is an inclusive book that represents a wide range of people, families, and realities. And so rather than focus on one specific culture, one specific way of life, the book really is accessible to and inclusive of the wide range of types of families that exist, not just here in the US, but in the world at large. The very last question that I ask myself in considering whether to spend my time, energy, money on any given read is in regards to the value. So is it worth it? And if all I've shared up to this point has not yet convinced you that this book is worth its weight in gold, I'll give you kind of my top 3 reasons why this book certainly is worth the time to read. One of my favorite parts of this book is the visual information included. There are several pages that include illustrations and pictures to help guide you as you create your Montessori home and space. These are really invaluable. I plan on dog-earing these pages and coming back to them again and again as I'm following my child through their development. Another beautiful addition to the book is the inclusion of real-life Montessori families and stories at the end of the book. These stories come from all over the globe and include Montessori families with multiple children, one children, and in a variety of diverse experiences. When I read the real stories and looked at the pictures of real Montessori families, it just felt very encouraging after reading all of this content and having so much of this be kind of just an idea, to really see it in action and to see how it's benefiting so many families from all over the world was a really nice touch that I appreciated. Finally, the book concludes with some really useful appendices or reference guides. I plan on coming back to these many times, specifically the tables that have all of the information and considerations for any given month of your child's development to keep in mind. I really plan on copying these, printing them out, and having them month by month up on a wall somewhere, maybe even by the changing table, so that I can easily reference them whenever I need. So all in all, I found this to be truly a fantastic and maybe even quintessential read for Montessori families. I am very glad that I started with this book. I was getting a little bit down on myself for having not started with something written by Maria Montessori herself. Now that I've started to move on to Maria Montessori's The Absorbent Mind, I'm so glad that I read a more practical, easy to follow book first, as I've already found that The Absorbent Mind is a lot more theoretical in nature. So you can expect a book talk about The Absorbent Mind by Maria Montessori soon. I hope that you found this book talk on the Montessori Baby to be helpful, and I would love to hear your recommendations or maybe the books that you're wondering about that you might like me to read and talk about in a future book talk. So if you found this video useful, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. I'm really excited just to start to grow and learn from this community, and I hope to be a part of your life, and I hope that you're a part of mine into the distant future. So have a great day. We'll see you next time.